Good evening. I'm David Smith. This is Week in Review. This evening we'll be discussing the $3 billion loss by JP Morgan in the derivatives market. We'll also discuss prison industries, something that some people may not even be familiar with. And we'll also discuss the upcoming NATO summit, which begins this coming week in Chicago. Good evening again. I'm here this evening with our co-host Eric, who joins us by telephone from San Diego. Also our co-host and producer Daniel Moran, who's with us in the studio. And I'd like to remind everyone of our Twitter hashtag WIRTV and also our email, David, Eric, or Daniel at weekinreview.tv. We'd like to hear from you. If you have any comments, questions, criticisms, or suggestions, we'd be happy to hear them. The three topics to begin the evening, we'll start with JP Morgan Chase and the $3 billion loss that they sustained in the derivatives market. This is a big issue. It leads back to the need for re-regulation of the financial industry in this country, which has been adamantly and strongly opposed by Jamie Dimon, who is the chairman and CEO of JP Morgan Chase, and also on the board of directors of the New York Fed. So we have a real conflict of interest here with this man who is opposing any financial regulations and yet is directing one of the principal banks, the too big to fail institutions that just lost $3 billion. What do you gentlemen think about this?
Yeah, well, the trouble with the big bankers is they've wanted to have it both ways. When they make risky investments, they want the government to bail them out, yet they don't want regulations. They want, like, the best of both worlds.
And I can't understand why we keep letting them have it, why people aren't enraged. I don't think they understand that $3 billion was U.S. taxpayer money.
Yeah.
That was not the bank's money or private money. That was U.S. taxpayer bailout money, TARP.
I just don't think we should bail these guys out. As a matter of fact, if they should be investigated, like my old friend Corzine. If they're doing something illegal, they should be put in jail.
Well, there's another, most people don't realize that was another derivatives. This is all about derivatives, this entire issue. Corzine in the commodities market was playing derivatives on European money, and Dimon is playing with derivatives on U.S. money.
Mm.
So this is a real problem we're having. These derivatives are essentially gambling, except they don't even have the you have better chances in Vegas than you do with these derivatives.
Like I said, I'm all for capitalism, but I don't think the government should bail these guys out.
Well, I don't think this is capitalism. This is gambling. This is not capitalism.
Yeah, this is gambling. Yeah, this is just gambling, and they've just made all kinds of things up for themselves to trade on, and they're not real commodities anymore.
No. Well, here I wrote down a few facts that I found. J.P. Morgan Chase is liable for $70.1 trillion in derivatives. Citibank is liable for $52.1 trillion in derivatives. Bank of America is liable for $50.1 trillion in derivatives.
Yeah.
And Goldman Sachs is liable for $44.2 trillion in derivatives. Now, to
All
put that in
taxpayer money,
perspective,
huh?
our national debt is only $15.1 trillion. That's an enormous amount of money. And when I say they're liable for, that means that we, the taxpayers, are going to be liable for that because these
Yeah.
banks are the too big to fail.
Yeah. It's time to stop backstopping these big banks.
You know, they get the bailout and we have to pay for it because
And no one goes to jail. No one's head rolls.
well, Diamond ought to be arrested and charged with
Yeah.
some criminal. Now, here is an issue. He signed the certification that the bank was solvent, that these derivative accounts were solvent and stable, and he lied. He committed perjury when he signed. So he ought to be brought, charged with a crime and brought to trial for it. Because it's a felony for a CEO to sign those certifications, knowing that these are risky bets.
Yeah.
And he did that.
Yeah. Well, this is socialism or crony capitalism. The government and the banks go into business together.
Well, this is we're looking at $292 trillion in derivatives that the banks in the United States are liable for.
That's like a ridiculous number I can't even picture.
Well, to put it in perspective, it's 3 times the entire amount of the global economy, not the economy of the United States, the global economy, the entire economy of the world.
Well, of course, no one should even be dealing in numbers like that.
Okay, this is a result of fractional reserve banking, which we're going to talk about later. That's going to be our topic for this evening, is how we actually got into this mess in the first place.
You know,
but 3
we're
times
getting out of
the
the-
entire global economy.
It's time to get out of the IMF and the Federal Reserve and all that stuff.
Well, it's going to wind up, in the end, it's going to wind up destroying the world economy.
Yeah.
The question
Oh, I
is
know,
what's going
Greece
to
and-
replace it.
Yeah, well, hopefully everybody will go back to printing, like you said, their own money and get rid of these international bankers altogether.
We're going to have to do something. People with this is serious because this crack in the derivatives market, it's not the stock market that we have to worry about, or even the euro and what's happening in Europe. The issue is derivatives, because that's what the economy of the world is now based on, is these fraudulent, very, very highly risky financial instruments.
Yeah,
That they
why don't you tell people these derivatives are so ephemeral? Why don't you try and explain what they are?
Well, they're basically bets against people, whether or not people will pay their debts. For example, when your mortgage, if you got a mortgage and you found that 90 days after your bank gave you the loan, your mortgage was sold to Washington Mutual, that meant that they had sold to Washington a bet that you would pay or not pay your mortgage.
This is what brought us down in the first place.
Yes.
Freddie Mac and Fannie Mae.
Yes, it was a bet on whether or not people would pay their mortgages. It was a gamble, a risk. And that's and these derivatives are cut up and repackaged and resold. That's why there are $292 trillion worth of them. 3 times the global economy just in the derivatives that United States banks are now liable for.
Yeah, well, they got to stop making all these risky loans. Well, why are Freddie Mac and Fannie Mae, why is that still there? Why isn't it gone?
I don't know, because we continue to bail it out. It
It
ought to
just
be
eats money.
It should simply be
Yeah,
allowed to go under. It's a
yeah,
bad idea to begin with. Not
it's just
everyone
a
in
black
America should
hole.
have a home.
It's
Yes,
just
they
a
should have a
black
home,
hole
but
we've
not a
been throwing
house.
money in.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's just a black hole that we've been throwing money in.
Well, this is
Well, the
this is
easiest way to get everybody a home is to get them a job.
yes, that's the problem. We're not creating jobs. Here's another real frightening issue. Right now, and this is something everyone has to. First of all, if you don't know what derivatives are, get a crash course. You can get it on the internet. Understand what these things are, because this is just the tip of the iceberg. This crack in the derivatives market that happened this week with J.P. Morgan Chase. It's happening in Europe. It's what the bank runs in Europe are all about. And if you haven't been following that, follow that. The banks in Europe are beginning to become insolvent. And when it starts over there, it's eventually going to get over here. But keep an eye
Yeah, I heard.
on interest rates.
Yeah,
When the
I
interest
heard.
rate,
What is it?
I'm sorry.
Oh, I heard Hollande and Merkel are having a big falling out already.
Oh yeah, the French are not going to pay. They're not going to do the austerity measures that the Germans are demanding. And of course, Greece is getting ready for its next round of elections because the left party in Greece refuses to form a coalition government with any party that is agreeable to the austerity measures. And so there's no government in Greece. They have to have another round of elections to see if the left can get enough votes or seats in parliament to actually form a government.
Well, I think Greece is going to become Somalia pretty soon.
Yeah, it's going to be a mess. Keep an eye on interest rates, everyone. Here's just one factor to consider. If the Fed raises interest rates, which it's going to have to, 1% rise in interest rates adds $130 billion to the national debt.
Well, you have hit the nail on the head for a long time with this. We got to get away from these international bankers. We got to get out of the IMF.
Yes.
We got to cut these guys loose.
It is the sovereign right and power of our government to create and issue our money. And that should never have been turned over to private bankers. This is what has happened. Because every dollar that they create, whether they print it on paper or they create it with digits in a computer, comes into existence with interest.
Yeah.
So it's not just the money that they create, it's the interest, which there's never enough money to pay.
Well, like you said, it's not real money.
Yeah, it's not.
Phony money.
Yes, it's not real money. So, but I thought we needed to keep an eye on this. Yes, it's debt. It's monetized debt, is what it is.
Yeah.
So we're looking at. I don't know how long it'll last. Maybe they'll stave it off here in America until the next year, but it's eventually going to start reaching us, and we're going to have some real serious problems.
Well, yeah, I think right after the election, of course, we're already talking about the debt ceiling. It's already coming around again.
Oh yeah, there's that's this thing about debt ceiling and a decrease in public services. That's austerity measures.
Yeah.
They're not using the word austerity measures here. You know, Boehner is careful not to use those, but that's what he wants. He's the one who's promoting the idea of austerity measures. He wants what happened to Greece to happen to us.
Yeah.
So you have to watch these politicians.
Yeah.
So
Anyway,
anyway,
I think
that's
going for a currency collapse. Yeah.
Yeah, it's gonna. You know, if you've noticed, the precious metals market is on the decline. Gold is down, silver's down significantly. The major banks are throwing a lot of paper at precious metals, trying to devalue them in order to keep people from buying into them and having a hedge against the hyperinflation that's coming.
Yeah, well, Obama and Geithner are not about to stop spending and printing money.
No. Well, that's what they need to get reelected. You got to have all
Yeah.
this money to give the people your particular constituencies in order to get reelected.
Well, you pointed it out the other day, David, that in what other office in the entire world would you spend $1 billion to get a $250,000 salary?
Yeah, the President of the United States makes $500,000 a year. Why would you spend $1 billion to get elected to an office that pays $500,000 a year? I mean, it's nice to fly on Air Force One. It's nice to live in the White House and so on. But you get rich after you get out of office, publishing your memoirs and getting all these exorbitant fees for public speaking.
Speeches,
Yeah, that's when you make your money, but you really don't make that much money. I mean, I think Clinton made $15 million on his memoirs. But still...
Yeah, but it's the speeches afterwards, the speeches and the connections.
Yeah, it's but it's
You're in
incredible.
The club after that.
You know, they're willing to do just about anything. Well, let's move on to NATO and the summit that they're going to have in Chicago. I found it interesting today. I noticed they've announced that they plan to shut down cell phone transmissions in the downtown area while the summit is going on. So they're continuing to inconvenience the people of Chicago while this summit is going on.
Well, I still don't know why NATO has continued to exist, but...
Well, I think if it needs to exist, then the Europeans need to pay for it, and it needs to be an entirely European enterprise.
Yeah.
We need to get out of it. We're not needed. They don't need us. They can afford to provide their own armed forces.
That's it. It's just been an excuse for the Europeans not to build their own armies and navies.
And it's not even fulfilling. It used to be defensive. It was purely a defensive organization. It's now become offensive. It bombs Bosnia, bombs Libya. You know, it's now engaged in activities in the Middle East. Since when is the Middle East part of NATO's concern or sphere of influence? You know, but they're down there in Afghanistan and Pakistan. Since when were these countries part of NATO?
You know, it should have been dismantled 20 years ago.
Yeah, it's so there's something we need to watch, and as you said, we need to get out of this. You know, this is the problem that George Washington warned us about, these entangling political alliances.
You know, if you want to make an alliance, you make an alliance with one country, and you make an alliance between you and them, and that's it. Not these big multi-alliances.
Well, it's costing us because we still pay 1/4 of NATO's budget.
Oh yeah, without us there is no NATO.
Yeah, and 1/4 of the UN's budget comes from us. Without us, there wouldn't be one.
Oh, and that's worked out so well, hasn't it?
You know,
we've been able to send UN aid workers all over the world to molest children.
You know. And now, you know, the president gave another couple of hundred. Well, they're talking about it at the G8 summit, which is occurring today at Camp David.
Yeah, and that's another organization. It used to be the G7, and then they started letting our enemies in. Yeah, Russia, and now it's the G8.
So now it's they're discussing international food aid. Apparently, the United States is the only country that's kept even a portion of the promised aid that was to be provided. We didn't provide all that we promised, but we were the only ones who provided any of what we promised. And,
all these international organizations are ineffective. They're crooked. It's time to get rid of all of them. If you want to go over and help a country, go help it. Otherwise, forget these international organizations. All it is a breeding ground for corruption, like the UN.
That's true.
UN's been stealing money from the African nations for close to a century now.
Well, we provide the money or the food aid, the direct food is shipped, and then it's turned over to NATO, and of course it goes to the warlords, either by direct theft or it's actually turned over to them. And
usually there's money passed. Usually the warlords give their buddies in the UN a little money, or children, or something.
So here's another scandal going on, that just outright theft and corruption.
So all these international organizations are all exempt from any police force, so they have like a license to be corrupt. No one's looking at them. There's no oversight to any of them.
Yeah, there is no. They're all, seem to be independent once for example, the UN refugee, the Human Commissioner for Human Refugees. Who do they report to? Who tracks them?
No one.
No one's tracking them. The UN doesn't seem to have any oversight. The General Assembly doesn't. The Security Council doesn't.
It's like the Obama administration. Whenever there's a problem, we'll review our procedures. No one gets fired. No one gets punished. No one goes to jail.
That's...
Well, it's just one of those bureaucracies that has the rights to make their own rules, enforce them, as well as they receive all complaints and deal with them appropriately, or not.
Yeah, because when the Catholic Church got in trouble, there's a police force to say, hey, you can't do that in this country. When the UN does it, there's no one.
Yeah.
They just get away with it.
Mm-hmm.
And by the way, if anybody doesn't know, the UN sex scandals makes the Catholic Church look like a Sunday school, literally.
Yes. And that's never reported. That very seldom gets any coverage. The only coverage I have ever heard of a UN sex scandal or sex abuse has been on Democracy Now!
Mm-hmm.
They're the only ones that ever report any of that.
Yeah, there's a few other that report it, but nothing happens. Because there's no oversight. There's no authority over the UN.
Well, yeah, the individual troops that committed while they're under UN control are called back to their native countries, and they're never punished.
No. This is why it's time to get rid of the whole organization. If a country wants to help another country out, let the country go help them out. Or better yet, let private charities do it.
Either that or leave the country alone and let it do it for itself.
Yeah, well, that's
and create its own economy and its own industry, and
because the UN, of course, is just breeding dependence now in these camps. They're keeping people in the camps, and once the next generation grows up and they didn't grow up on the farm, they don't know how to farm.
Well, that's the issue in Africa. The reason that there's famine is there aren't enough people to till the land, to farm it.
No,
that's the problem.
And then you have UN camps full of young people that aren't learning anything.
Yes.
Well, they might be learning English or something they're never going to need,
Of course.
Yeah.
But they're not learning a skill. They're not learning agriculture. They're not learning manufacturing. They're not learning anything.
They're not learning how to cultivate the family farm, no.
No. So that's... but that issue is...
Yeah, well, like I said, the UN's just creating a huge dependent population in Africa, and it's going to become a horrendous trouble in a few years, if it isn't already.
Well, let's move on to our own form of enslavement here in America. We have the issue of prison industries. I don't know how many people are familiar with this. Unless you've worked with the government, probably most people are not too familiar with this. But if you go to the courthouse or city hall and you look at all that furniture and all those office, file cabinets, desks, chairs, all of that is manufactured by prison industries. And those are manufactured by prisoners in our prisons here in America, who earn 25 cents a day
Yeah. Well, that was Van Jones's specialty. That's how he got the position in the Obama administration, was supposedly putting prisoners to work for green jobs.
Oh,
The
wonderful.
communists.
Yes.
The communists, yeah, the communists. That was his expertise, is exploiting slave labor.
Slave labor. And this is just
Yeah.
the communists and the Nazis all over again. You know, this
Yeah.
was what the Nazi concentration camps were all about. And the SS, these people were worked to death manufacturing goods for the Third Reich.
Well, it does sound
This is
like
what-
we're basically creating, as you said, our own slave labor, and we're doing that in record numbers considering we're constantly building prisons and our laws are getting stricter. It sounds like they're just basically enslaving humanity, or certainly the American public.
Well, there are 2 million people in prison in the United States, the largest prison population on the planet. No other country comes close.
This is the trouble with big government. Yeah.
And in order to keep the prisons filled, one, to supply income to the private sector that's operating the prisons, and then to provide workers to provide the goods from prison industries at 25 cents a day, they're turning everything into a crime. That's why we have all these arrests for minor drug offenses and people doing, 1 to 2 years for these minor drug offenses.
Well, yeah, they can go after the dealers, but they don't want the dealers. They want the addicts, because they're more
Well, I
of
hate
them.
to say it, but the whole prison system has been a failure. I think we should try something else. Maybe flogging for the stocks.
Well, what was it in Connecticut that used to have an option for public flogging for misdemeanors? You could either serve a year in the county jail and pay your $1,000 fine, or be publicly flogged.
Yeah.
And they had
Well,
the people who took public flogging, the recidivism rate was practically zero because they were so humiliated they left the state. It was so humiliating.
Well, also, you get them back on with their lives. You don't warehouse them, spend money on them, and have them kill each other in prison.
Yeah.
I mean, they don't have to publicly flog them, but for minor offenses, I'd say give them a few whacks and let them go. Let them get back to their lives, to have a job or whatever. Let them get back to it, their families.
Yeah, that might be. Well, there's another problem, because when we pull, let's say a drug addict gets arrested for having a dime bag of pot on his person while he's arrested at a traffic stop, you put him to jail for a year, and what happens to his wife and their 4 children? Well, she has to go on welfare, so it winds up costing us even more money when he's not working, paying taxes, and we're paying for his wife and children.
That's it. Like I said, this whole prison system needs to be rethought. The penitentiaries, no one's repenting in them anymore.
No, they're not.
There's been no penitence in any of them for a long, long time.
There's a chart showing our incarceration rate from 1920 to present. It looks like almost like the chart that graphs the national debt. If you laid them one over the other, they practically look alike.
Well, here in California, I guess you heard that if so many people in prison, they just pop them out.
Oh yeah, the courts finally have to order them to be released because they're overcrowded.
They're just letting people out left and right here in California.
Yeah. And of course, there's no job for them when they get out. There's no way for them to they immediately go back to what they know best.
Well, yeah, I live here in the stupid state, as you probably heard. We're $15 trillion in debt, and no one has any idea what to do about it.
What do you think of Governor Brown's proposals? I don't think they're going to have any effect, but
no. Well, he's going to tax the rich people. Well, we're becoming pretty much two and a half classes here. We have the super rich, the public employees, and everybody else is poor.
Yes.
Oh, hey, I did get a hold of that national debt chart, and here it is.
Yep.
And here is the incarceration rate.
If you look at them, they both look pretty much alike.
They look identical.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I mean, unless some politician wants to start bringing business back to California, we're sunk.
Yeah, and you're the 8th largest economy in the world.
Yeah.
The 8th largest economy in the world is the state of California.
Well, maybe we're the 8th largest bankrupt economy in the world.
So if this is happening, imagine how bad the rest of the world really is. I don't think they're really letting us know how bad things really truly are. They've kept a lid on it, but the pressure cooker is about to blow.
If anyone in the rest of the country wants to know how a second Obama term would be, just come here to California.
Yeah.
There's just empty storefronts and everything here.
Well.
Yeah.
Well, let's move on to, well, we're actually talking about it anyway, but we were going to talk about the economy and how we actually got into this state in the first place. I encouraged everyone to watch The Money Masters by William T. Still.
It's an excellent video.
Everyone should watch that. You'll understand why we're in the state we're in, what has happened. These international bankers, right from the beginning, have tried to take over and have now succeeded in taking over our economy.
Yeah.
And now we're paying the cost of not being vigilant. And it's coming up to the point where we're going to have to make some very serious decisions about what needs to be done. And we can't keep, I guess, according to Alan Greenspan, we can keep printing money endlessly to meet our obligations. He says that's not a problem. We can keep printing money. He says the problem is we can't know what the value of the money will be. There's no way of guaranteeing that.
We're living in the Weimar Republic, yeah.
Yeah, you can keep, we can keep printing money to meet our debts, but we won't know what the value of the money will be.
Pretty soon you're going to need a wheelbarrow to go shopping to carry your money in.
Well, the money, $1 in 1920, I think was the one that I looked at. The value now is equal to 4 cents. $1 now is equal to 4 cents in 1920.
Oh yeah. Well, I just went by the gas station today, and it's $4.29 to fill up your tank here. The cheap stuff.
The cheap stuff, $4.29. What is it here, Daniel? What was it the last time you?
Well, I just filled up at $3.39.
$3.39 here,
and that's pretty high.
Okay. Yeah, for here, that's
I told
high.
you this is the stupid state. Yeah, well, that's all tax. That's all tax in the state of California.
Yeah, because you've got all those extra taxes that California adds for, and you have to have a special brand of gasoline to begin with. They won't allow you to. It has to be special brand with special additives.
Well, if you notice, I've got up on the screen right now a value of the dollar chart. It only goes up to 2000 when we declared war on terrorism.
Oh, look at that.
It looks the opposite of our incarceration rate.
Yes, it just goes.
Well, like I said, the government here in California is just, like I said, if you want to know what another Obama term is going to look like, just come here.
Well,
all they're talking about is higher and higher taxes, and like I said, there's no one to pay them.
Yes, well, that's a good question. Most people are fleeing California now.
Yeah.
So who's going to pay these taxes that Governor Brown wants to?
That's a good question. That's the big question. I guess you heard New York Times did a big hit piece on Apple about 2 weeks ago. They didn't think they were paying enough taxes. That's one of the few businesses here that's making money. I don't know why you'd attack them.
Well, that's, we need to get back to no taxes. They need to roll back the taxes on business, get businesses back there, and roll back the taxes on people and get people to work, earning money
Yeah.
and putting money into the economy.
That's
Well,
all
like-
fine and good, but you got to remember that what was it, back in November there was supposed to be a deadline for agreeing whenever we raised the debt ceiling,
Oh,
that
yeah.
the
There's always-
the two parties would come together and agree, and if they couldn't agree, there would be hard cuts in the defense industry and that sort of thing.
Oh, everything, yes. And there isn't.
And yeah, and so now, and this is amazing. This is bad about the Republicans here is the Democrats are willing to cut their social programs, and the Republicans are not. They're standing their ground and they're saying, "Well, we don't want to, cut the defense industry. Let's cut this service and that service and this
Well,
service."
do you know why they don't want to cut the defense industry?
Well, no,
It's
it'll-
the
it'll-
only manufacturing that we have left. It's the only thing
Yeah.
that we manufacture and export is weapons. If they cut that, we literally will have no industry left. I saw a piece on GM. GM, the company that we bailed out, the taxpayers of the United States bailed out, is moving to China. It's
Yeah.
becoming GM of China.
Well, that's what
That's how
Best Buy
they
did.
thank the American people for bailing them out, is taking everything is going to move over to China. They have manufacturing over there. And if you want to go on YouTube and look at the video and watch the chairman of GM at a presentation in China and listen to him talk about the alliance, the union between China and GM, it's
Yeah.
nauseating.
Yeah.
I
Well,
had
like I
not
said, they
heard
should have
that.
just let them go.
Yes.
No, they should have just let them go bankrupt and restructure, of course.
Instead, we bailed them out, and they took that money, and they're going to take all their business over to China. They won't have any union problems. They'll have cheap
No.
labor. And then they'll ship all those cars over here to America.
Yeah, unless there's anybody left to buy them.
exactly.
So, or
Yeah, I
China
don't
will
know
ship
whether
them
that's-
to other countries that will.
Yeah, I don't know who's going to be left here to buy anything.
But that's
Yeah.
why this constant drum by the Republicans to not cut defense spending at all, but to increase it if at all possible, is that's the only thing that we manufacture and export. And it also, of
Yeah, well-
course, we buy the weapons to support our own military intervention and enterprises around the world, which is why we're engaged in all these wars.
Oh, yeah, well, we should have been out of Afghanistan when Osama got killed. That was the perfect time to leave.
Well, did you hear the president is sending troops over to Africa? They're going to increase the number of troops, and they're going to go around from country to country to do training.
Yeah. That's
So,
what
of
we
course,
need to
that
train
always
more.
is the prelude to us becoming involved in some type of military conflict, is we send advisors and trainers.
Either that, or they take their training and attack us with it.
Yeah. So it's, but that's,
No, it's time to get out of all these foreign wars. It's time, like I said, yeah. Well, if he wants us to stay in Afghanistan, 22 years now? Obama
yeah.
wants us to support this crook Karzai.
Well, the thing is, it's ridiculous. Karzai can't even travel safely in his own capital city. He can't leave the capital of Kabul. They'll kill him if he does. That's the only control they have is Kabul, the government of Afghanistan. They're barely holding on to that.
Well, we pretty much recreated what the Russians were doing in Afghanistan. That's all they held at the end.
Yes. We're trying to find a way to leave without being driven out by the Afghans. We're trying to find
Like
a
I
way
said,
to say
that'd
we
be
left
perfect
honorably.
when
We achieved the mission, and we're leaving.
Yeah, if after Osama bin Laden got killed, that was the perfect time to declare victory and leave.
with that issue,
I don't
with
know.
our, as far as the economy is concerned, we can't sustain this anymore. And
No, we don't have any money.
we cannot allow our money and our credit to be controlled by a cartel of
Hmm.
private bankers who are actually foreign bankers. The
Yeah, I don't
majority,
know why.
that's why we sent all that money. So much of the TARP funds went to Europe and to European companies.
I don't know why Hillary Clinton and Obama are going around promising everybody money. We don't have any.
Yes. Well, they're just going to print it. You know,
Yeah.
of course, it won't be
Okay.
worth anything for us if it comes back into this country.
I
So-
think we're just on the way to the Weimar Republic, quicker and quicker. Yeah.
Well, everyone keep an eye on this because in the next several months, and again, keep an eye on interest rates. When interest rates start to rise and the derivative bubble keeps collapsing, watch out for your pension. If you're depending on one, I wouldn't because it's gonna suffer.
Yeah.
You know, and just kind of start looking at your financial status and start protecting your assets. Get into commodities not that you own on contract, but that you actually have possession of. If you're going to buy
Well,
gold
another
and
thing-
silver, you have to have the bullion in your possession. The
Or
coin.
go one better like the Mormons and buy food.
Yeah, buy food. That's a commodity. You know, buy food because you're going to need it.
Well, just be aware that you'll be added to the terrorist watch list.
Yeah, if you do, because all these things are considered the presidential, the executive order on national resources that Obama signed declares all commodities to be subject to seizure by the United States. So food, gold, silver, whatever you have is going to be subject to seizure by the government. So
So hide your food well, and at least you'll be able to eat while everybody else is collapsing.
yeah, so it's. But take care to look for those things and watch out. We didn't do a lot of comments on how we got here, but watch that DVD or the YouTube video, The Money Masters. It's about 3.5 hours long, but it's an excellent, thorough explanation of our current
No.
status and how we got there and how our money and credit work in the United States and who's controlling it.
Yeah.
Next week we're off. It's our 1 week hiatus, and then we'll come back with 2 weeks. We're going to be discussing Islam, especially the infiltration of the Muslim Brotherhood into our political and institutional structures here and what their agenda is. And we'll also be discussing the history and development of Islam and so on. So,
You might also want to look at Breitbart because he has the tapes of Reverend Wright talking about Obama and Islam.
yes, that's a very interesting. That's a very interesting story that's developing. Apparently, Jeremiah Wright made it known that he helped Obama come to some sort of resolution about how he could accommodate Christianity to his Islamic beliefs and upbringing. So that's an interesting issue altogether.
But yeah, I'd like to encourage everybody. The Islam thing, we've been doing a lot of research on this, David and I, and Islamic philosophy and history, and we're going to have a lot to say that you have no idea of yet.
So we'll see you all in 2 weeks. We thank you for joining us. Remember our Twitter hashtag WIRTV and our email address, David, Daniel, or Eric at weekinreview.tv. And we'll see you in... I'm sorry?
Oh, I'd just like to thank our few subscribers.
Oh, yes. Thank you, our subscribers. Thank you for commenting. Eric is sort of in a dialogue with a couple of people on our episodes on Marxism. So if you'd like to take a look at that, or
We'll have
review
to
those.
invite them onto the show.
You know,
Maybe we got some good questions they can elaborate their points.
okay. We'll look at doing that as well. Well, thank you all again. And again, please give us your comments if there's any particular questions you have or issues you want us to discuss regarding Islam. We'd be happy to do that if you'll email them to us. So we'll see you in 2 weeks. And thank you again. I'm David Smith, and this is Week in Review.